Good morning, everybody. It's Tuesday, January 9th, 2024. Welcome to the show. I am Tom Kaczynski. This is going to be a little half update, probably go about 10 minutes. I just wanted to record a couple things I thought you might want to keep an eye on while I was making some coffee this morning before I get to work. Three things in specific I thought were interesting out there. I'm not saying any of them were true. I mean, if you want something that's interesting and harder to prove, check out that deal in Miami. Isn't that a weird one? But number one, the tunnels in New York City that they found beneath the Chabad headquarters. For a very long time, Chabad has had a disproportionate role in American politics. That's Kushner's group that he used to hang about, and the Reb and all of that. And if you go down that rabbit hole, you would end up in a very long one that would eventually lead you to Sabbateanism and this idea that there was a Jewish Messiah that was living in Turkey. It's a fascinating story. I've read it in some depth, and it's definitely worth understanding, but it's interesting because, the implications of what these tunnels are being used for. You see strollers and mattresses down there. I mean, obviously it was being used to move people at some point, and, the mind goes to dark places, with some good reason, to be honest with you, but we'll see what comes out in the wash on that. But the timing of it, as always, is interesting, because number two, and perhaps what should be theoretically more importantly, but the two probably could be related, is if you're not keeping an eye on Germany's farmers, bikers, and by the end of this week, starting tomorrow, I believe, the train workers will be involved. Europe is basically seeing its productive class shut down their ability to function because the political class there wants to ban diesel gasoline. This is my understanding of what's there, or make it so expensive, rather, that it's functionally unaffordable. And this is part of their, Build Back Better sort of 2025 World Economic Forum consensus that we're seeing, that they're trying to basically starve people out by taking away their ability to fuel. We've seen this with Gilets Jaunes, the Yellow Vest in France, the various efforts by the Dutch to stop this, including a political party of farmers, actually, that got elected. And with Germany threatening to ban the AfD, Alternative for Deutschland, with the socialists leading their way, democracy by taking people off the ballot. Sounds familiar to you here in the U.S., I'm sure. We are seeing an increasing effort to by the system to control people who do not want the wars. They do not want the war in Ukraine anymore. They sure as hell don't want a war in Gaza for Israel, who, by the way, in case you're not paying attention, Israel has been in secret negotiations with the Congo to expatriate all the Palestinians there. I mean, I don't know where they belong, but the middle of the Congo ain't it. And the idea that we are supporting this. I mean, maybe part of the change you've seen was related to the event in South Carolina yesterday, where Joe Biden went and spoke at a black church and was roundly booed and run off the stage, not by the people who were there, but by people who came in there to question the what's happening in Gaza. Or I'm sure the New Yorkers who were pissed off that the Holland Tunnel was stopped, or a number of other things. But what's happening is the crisis in conscience and the crisis in competency are meeting, and you see people trying to make the society slow down and stop because they can see that it's being set up in a way against their interest. And for the farmers, by the way, I agree with that. And while I might question some of the tactics of the people supporting Gaza, I think that Israel is trying to get away with a slow-motion ethnic cleansing. And I think they're not the only ones in that area. I think the Azerbaijani, with the Turks' his support, and with the Russians look the other way, are doing the same thing in parts of Armenia. You see weird moves happening. Ethiopia, we don't even talk about them, right? They're getting sea access back around Eritrea, who hates them, and the Somalis, who don't like them, by the country of Somaliland. Yeah, there's two Somalias. I don't know. Maybe we may need to know this to know where people need to go back from if we actually ever have a government that does that. And, there were a couple compelling threads on 4chan last night, I think, that made a decent point that this is why they're going to bring Trump back. The left is livid at its own leadership and has no support of it. But the right still sort of believes in Trump, and he still has that salesman appeal to try to sell some of this stuff to the people who don't want it. But, we are now in the new world. We are actually into the inception of the dawning of the bionic age, of where machines will be put onto mankind, and that's why you see elites trying to create opportunities to reduce the number of people in the world. That's why you see people being run across the border like crazy. And some of them are even making money on it. I read this incredible thing from El Salvador, right? El Salvador is charging people who come from certain countries, the way I was read was literally who have certain complexions, $1,000 to transit the country. And you know what they're doing? They're making money off the NGOs who are trying to use this while they rebuild their country. Bukele, I think, if I remember the guy's name, is doing a pretty good job there getting that country back into line. But this is a new age entry. It's the end of the age of democracy and decadence. It's going to be an age where debauchery gives way eventually to violence, and we see the creation of a new world. And the elites are going to try to stay out of the way and let other people fight and then jump in at the end. That's what it looks like. But you can see that they're losing control in the United States. They're losing control in Europe. I was reading this morning, there are now protests happening in France, the Netherlands, Belgium, Austria, Poland, to couple those with Germany. And these are countries that don't all see eye to eye, but that's part of the story too, that there are classes of people now in the world that's more connected. We talk a little bit, I've been writing on my Twitter a lot about this. We don't count for the fact that global communications between groups is a thing. You know, take it from me, a dissident nationalist politician. Once upon a time, people talk to one another, and it's not lost between people living in different countries, especially close to each other, when the same scam is being pulled on them, and you will see solidarity form in different classes, especially as what happened after World War II happened, which was that the elites of all countries, for the most part, except definitely in the first world, and I would argue to a large extent in the third world as well, were all working for their common interest against the people beneath them. Where Russia exists, those second world countries, whether they're part of it on some level or against it, that's a more interesting and difficult question. We could work through that at some other point, but these are some of the things that are happening today you should keep an eye on. In the meantime, while our country is now past $34 trillion in debt, I think it's worth noting that Mike Johnson was able to come together with Chuck Schumer and find a way to get the money they wanted for the things going forward. And now the argument being made is we need to support Ukraine and we need to build a border wall. Those two are not necessarily needing to be together. It would be perfectly logical and a great opportunity for a series of senators to say, hey, you know what? We have the right to decide if we're going to war. We don't want to get drawn deeper into war in Russia. There was a rumor floating around. I don't know if it's true, but it's an interesting rumor that the reason why Lloyd Austin disappeared is he was in Ukraine talking to them about a new phase of the war, and the Russians may have blown up the bunker he was in. Now, I don't believe he died, but I do believe if that's true, a message was sent, and I'm sure the Russian patience is pretty much exhausted. Get to the point of what we know is going to happen. Ukraine is going to face a partition of some sort and some sort of agreement. Probably you'll see Galicia, those are the western 4 or 5 provinces, by and large given to Poland. There are certain enclaves, exclaves that would belong better to Hungary or Romania. Those may be moved. And you'll see a Ukrainian rump state based around Kiev, while Russia annexes everything to the east. And frankly, after everything that's happened, don't be surprised if Kharkiv and Odessa aren't part of that equation. I would be surprised if they're not. And I wouldn't be surprised if Russia decides, hey, we're going to keep going here because this just isn't worth it. I don't think they actually want Galicia, and they may just leave that. But everything else, including potentially Kiev, is part they see of their civilization. And while seeing it part of their civilization as in a country, that's still something we need to think about. Because, for instance, we would probably respond certain ways to things happening in Canada, even though Canada is becoming a South Asian country. And Mexico? Well, Mexico's complicated. You know, Mexico's got a couple countries in itself, and it's got a long history. But it is part of North America, and it is its destiny is entwined with that in the United States. That's certainly true. For me, what's going on? We're in a new year, just working, saving money, getting ready to take a trip down to Latin America, hopefully in April, May at the worst. Actually had some interest in some people who want to do similar things. My thought is people should do their own thing when they go down there, but I'm keen on the idea of meeting people who are down there, and if we all can kind of look and see different things and talk while we do our own things, that's a pretty good idea. And if it was something bigger, I think it's a very prudent time to get away from a dollar whose purchasing value is clearly evaporating before our eyes, and a social economic scene that's crazy. And it's not going to change. This is a microcosm, but it had me livid yesterday. I'm having this conversation with someone on Twitter. They seem like a perfectly nice person, so I'm going to anonymize them. But we were talking about work, and I was talking about the well-understood problem that many young men face, young white men, that they can't get hired because they're white. And it's true. I mean, it's just true. Your HR is going to sit there and intercept you and say, well, you don't fit our DEI score, so unless we have to hire you, we're not going to. And so this other person, and I made a joke about it, and it's a good joke, by the way, and it's a smart idea. If you are a white person applying for something, pick another race you think you can hide as and do it. I mean, I wouldn't normally recommend this, but, until you're ready to do everything, you got to do something, right? So we get to this situation, and I've said, the joke is like, oh, we're all mixed race now, and this mixed race person gets into the chat, which is fine. It's Twitter, I respect that. He's like, oh, yeah, no, people really like us because they like that we're different groups of people, unlike you who we don't like. But that's okay, I like you anyway. And he seemed like a young guy, and he was naive and sort of a go-getter enough, maybe corporate type, early 20s. And I remember, look, I'm an old man now. I remember different points of life. At some points, you eat different propaganda, right? At different points, and in your 20s, you might believe in work, and you might believe in a company because your first boss hasn't really screwed you over yet. But anyway, the conversation evolves, or I should say devolves, into this argument. It's like, oh, well, if you just act like this and ask for them to be mentors and to support you and to be part of the program, you'll be welcomed. I mean, dude, you got to see where you are. People like me, people like you, we built this thing. We did. Joe the Builder, right? Simple, what they call it, basic bitch conservative politics. We built it, and now we're being excluded. And we are checking out. And we're going to continue to check out, by the way. Trump isn't the answer to the checking out. A restructuring of society is it. I mean, the things you'd have to contemplate are beyond the ability of this country to do and hold together at this point, And you know that because you stopped them every step of the way. You stopped people like Buchanan. You stopped people like Perot. You stopped people like Ron Paul. You stopped all the people who wanted to do good things. You marginalized them. You marginalized Tucker. You marginalized all the voices who were speaking truth. Okay. So, this is your future. Don't expect us to uphold it. We might take care of each other, and we might do what we have to do to persist. We all have to do that. But leadership, we're not one for leaders. We expect that. There's prices to inaction. On the other hand, don't expect us to listen to your bullshit and pretend it's anything other than what it is. My job is to tell you things out here getting crazy. And I should tell you another thing. And this is something that's hard for Americans to understand, I think. But I have a lot of European friends, and I have a surprising number of Latino friends with whom it's not really an issue. Race is a bigger issue in the United States than it is anywhere else, because race is used as a weapon in the United States far worse than it is anywhere else. Other areas still know who they are. They know people are being brought in. They know people who don't belong there. Look at the recent situation in Ireland with Conor McGregor and that situation that they had over there where, people had enough. And here it's hard because you see every minority take advantage of these opportunities to basically gain a greater share. That's why Canada's already been displaced. Canada's lost. Honestly, its profile looks more like India. I'm not even joking. And people can't afford property there because they're not willing to live by the same terms. They lived under an old agreement, a social contract, where, men and women would get married, they'd have a family, and the state would support that. Now you have the state making money because you have 20 Indians living in a house. Or it could be 20 Guatemalans or 20 Somalis, whatever. But these states are over and over doing that, and they like that because they're sucking every little last drop dry before they let the currency collapse. And that's where we are in the story. So you have some liquidity now, and you have some capital, and you have a little bit of time. You probably have to the next election, but maybe they need more time. Maybe they really do. And you might even get another 4 years out of it. If you get that reprieve, what are you doing with it? Are you getting out of the way, or are you going to wait till the system takes away options from around you? Do you remember what COVID was like? Do you remember what was taken from you? It's coming back. Maybe not as COVID. Probably not as COVID, but who knows? Could be a disease. Could be anything. Could be cyber pandemic. Give you a lot of options. But where are you? Where are you mentally? And let me tell you one other thing, because I know a lot of people, and I understand nationalism in the politics of it really well. Good people are the answer to the problem. Get 1,000 people in the right area, and those settlers will build your new civilization. It worked for Aeneas, it would work for you. It worked for the Pilgrims, the Puritans. It worked for a lot of different people, including people who were from different areas, Chinese communities, whatnot. It doesn't really matter, but at this point, you can't be part of something whose existence is predicated on the destruction of you, destruction of your beliefs and morality in an amoral secular world, the destruction of your race and your appearance, your very genome, because of your tendency toward independence and resistance. All of these things are being targeted. Your destruction of the idea of you being the root of your family and the state, like Plato suggested, being able to run your kids. That's what they want. They want you checked out. And, it's happening. And technology is making it worse. We really should have asked questions. The questions we never asked were, is this technology that we're permitting going to be something that, when adopted from everyone, becomes an addiction, a snare we can't get away from? And the answer, by the way, has been yes. It has been yes in every situation, and that's something to think about. You are your habits, you are your usage of things, you are all of these questions. So what are you doing to change your life? And that's what you got to think about. And my suggestions are very, very simple. Number one, ask the Lord to help you. I'm a Christian. I'm not shy about it. I think that some problems are beyond us, and getting out of this requires a couple miracles. Better start looking for them. But once you've done that, talk to your family, come to a shared understanding, figure out who's with you and who will never be with you. Be honest about that and move along. If you're a man, make a decision, tell your wife they have to lead. And I feel bad because I know situations where it's the other way, where the husband won't go and the wife wants to. I don't know what to tell you in these sad situations. I would just say to work at what you have to work at. All right? That's the news. Those are the updates. Keep an eye on things. If anything big breaks, you know how it goes. God bless each and every one of you. May the Lord watch over you, watch over your house, keep you safe in these strange days. And I tell you, I think this year's going to be crazy, but it's not going to be the year it pops off. Let's hope that I'm right. All right. God bless. You guys have a good day. Say a prayer for Dana. All right. Venmo, CVC, PRV, PO Box 343, Eagle Lake, Maine, 04739.